Welcome back to the Mat Return. I'm Evan Smith.
I'm Andrew Deal.
And I'm AJ Piazza.
And we got to talk about last week's match against Lehigh and this upcoming BJC duel out of nowhere up against Wyoming later in the week. Andrew, you wrote about the Lehigh match. Can you talk about what you saw?
Yeah, it was kind of the unknowns of the lineup for Penn State that really stood out to me. At 125, it started off with Luke Lillidahl, ranked 16th at the time, facing the 15th-ranked Sheldon Seymour, and he kind of had control of it the whole match. Ended up winning 4-1 in a match that really, like I said, he controlled it the whole time. He looked like the better wrestler that entire time, and his new ranking kind of showed that. I think he probably should have gone up a little bit more. He went up to number 12, so he jumped 4 spots. And then also at 197, that's got to be the storyline of this entire duel. Josh Barr ranked 23rd at the time against number 6 Michael Beard, who was at Penn State, and Barr just completely dominated. First period, 0-0, they were kind of feeling each other out, and then Barr just went after him and went into the third period up, I believe it was 4-2, and ultimately ended up winning 11-3. In the third period, he just showed complete dominance and took down one of the higher-ranked wrestlers at 197.
Yeah, honestly, that's the same for me. My question was if Josh Barr was legit, because he hasn't really wrestled a ton of matches at Penn State and not really many at 197. And the fashion that he won this match against, at the time, number 6 Michael Beard, was very impressive. And Barr jumped up to number 7, I believe, in the rankings now. And just another unknown that, while the result wasn't in his favor, was Braeden Davis good enough to wrestle against number 1 Ryan Crookham? And he did. While he did lose 4-2, it was still a tight match. It was close, and he kept it really competitive, which I think is a bright spot considering, it's a new weight class for him too, and he went against the number 1 guy after coming back from an injury. That's what stood out to me. I think that was really impressive.
Do you want to talk a bit about those rankings that you guys kept brought up? Because we had a lot of discussion through the Penn State Wrestling comments about those rankings, starting with Luke Lillidahl. I think we can all agree he should be higher, but I run it as I don't think it really matters yet. It's his freshman year. He's wrestled 5 matches? Forget how many he had in that tournament.
He's 5-0.
And he's doing fantastic. He doesn't need to get bumped up higher yet. For me, I just look at it this way. Enjoy the upsets that you get while he's still ranked outside the top 10, and then he'll work his way up when the season matters to the point where he has to be ranked higher.
I honestly think that he should be ranked higher, and I understand why he should. There's a chance that he's the best wrestler, if not top 3, in this weight class, and they're not really showing that in the rankings. Now, while I believe that's just because he's a freshman, I honestly think you could swap Josh Barr and his ranking. Josh Barr I could see at 12, and Lillidahl I could see at 7. That's just me personally, but I really think Lillidahl will end up dominating this weight class, and while it'll show as upsets, I don't think it really should even count as an upset.
That's why I think just enjoy it while it's happening, because it's kind of funny to see upset Luke Lillidahl over at, I think one of the times he beat number 20-something, and it was still technically an upset at that point. Yeah. I'd say look and laugh, because you know the talent's there. It's going to keep showing. He'll be ranked at the top of the class when it gets to the point where he needs to be ranked at the top of that class.
Yeah, if he just keeps winning, it's not really going to be an issue. And, he is a world champion. I think they're being cautious with him right now because you haven't seen him too much in collegiate wrestling, and he's 5-0 so far and has looked really good every single time. So he'll slowly continue to move up if he continues to win. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the Big Ten championship, he's going to be in the conversation with the likes of Matt Ramos, who's number 1 right now.
I think, though, the reason why they're being cautious about his ranking is, I'm just trying to think about it, because Josh Barr went up so much from 23, but Josh Barr also won 11-3. Lillidahl's match was really close, so I think they're looking at it like that, they can bump him up a little bit each week, and until he really wins by a large score, I don't know if they'll really do that explosive bump up yet to put him in the top of the class.
Yeah, nothing wrong with making the freshman earn his way back up, or not back up, earn his way up in the first place. But earning his way back up, Braeden Davis fell a few slots after falling to number 1. And there was some discussion around why did he fall after barely losing number 1. I look at it as a loss is a loss. It's okay that he falls. It's also early in the year, so he's got the chance to rebuild. So it's not like it's the end of the season disaster here. I don't know what you guys think about that topic.
I actually have a question for you guys about this. Why did he wrestle in that match? Now, I get he was probably good enough to go, but that's his first match back against the number 1 guy in the class. Was it like really necessary to wrestle him though?
Well, we talked about this last week, and we both said that it wasn't. And then during the broadcast, they actually brought this up and made a really good point that Penn State is all about an aggressive mindset. So if he's good to go, he's going to wrestle. And clearly they thought he was good enough to go, and he held his own against Ryan Crookham. And Crookham actually, I don't want to say he looked scared to attack. He just didn't attack to a point where if he thought he was going to make an attack at any point, that Davis was going to be able to reverse it into extra points, and Crookham already had the lead and was just able to hold on to it throughout that. But Davis only dropped the 1 spot, and like you said, he's going to be able to build himself back up, dropping from 10 to 11.
That, and if he only lost by 2 points, right?
Yeah.
While unhealthy, it'll be interesting to see the potential rematch when it gets to the point where Braeden Davis is back to him full self. Well, no, that's the first good thing I've heard said about a Flow Wrestling broadcast all year.
Yeah.
It's a bit tough on Flow Wrestling a little bit. But just my point about Davis, not that I don't think he could have won, but that's just, to me, a tough first match back, after being out or held out for like a week and then they didn't have a match. But, yeah, I just thought that was a little tough first match back.
Better to test him early in the season. Like I said, only fall 1 spot, not too bad. But part of his chances to regain that starts on Sunday with a newly minted Bryce Jordan Center duel against Wyoming. Kind of a surprise announcement as the volleyball team will be taking over Rec Hall for the regional finals. What do you guys think the environment's going to be like at a makeshift Bryce Jordan Center duel? I believe the upper deck's probably going to be tarped off for this one.
I think it's
not going to be like the full presentation they usually have for these Bryce Jordan Center duels against a Big 12 Wyoming team.
Yeah, they just put extra tickets on sale today, which is pretty interesting considering the duel is, would that be 4 days away? The tickets that people bought for the Rec Hall match will still carry over to the Bryce Jordan Center, but they just added those tickets, and I don't think it's going to be as loud of an environment as the typical BJC duels are, and it is against a Wyoming team that is just outside the rankings. They're 2-2 this season. First time ever playing or wrestling them, so there's a lot involved in this that will add up to make it not as great of an environment. It's still going to be an incredible environment because it always is for Penn State wrestling, but it's not going to be the same as the BJC duels that we'll see in January.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the vibe's there and the crowd's going to be electric, I think, no matter what. It's not going to be like one of those originally planned duels like against Iowa or Michigan. But Wyoming, it's the first time that Penn State has wrestled them, but they're on a little bit of a losing streak. They lost to Oklahoma State, which Oklahoma State's very good, and they lost to Oklahoma. But I still think the fans will be excited to just see Penn State wrestle someone different and new that they've never wrestled before.
I do want to tell this kind of funny story about seeing that Wyoming match get announced. Coming into this year, I watched college wrestling, but mostly like the national tournaments. I didn't keep too much focus on conferences other than the Big Ten. So the story got teased as Penn State adds Big 12 opponent. I'm here, Oklahoma, West Virginia maybe? Did they get Oklahoma State out of nowhere? I log in, I go, Wyoming, they're in the Big 12. And from like an outside college sports fan who wasn't fully entrenched in the world of wrestling at that point, seeing who is in the Big 12 for wrestling was like a shocking experience. Cal Baptist exists. Northern Iowa is a school that I didn't expect, but I guess it makes sense how they get a wrestler like Parker Kakaisen there.
Yeah, there's the teams that are in the Big 12, it makes sense for wrestling because most of them are geographically in the same area that the regular Big 12 is.
That matters now? I thought that stopped mattering.
Well,
About
for
2
wrestling,
years ago, right?
For wrestling, it still does. At least right now, with the Big Ten still not having any of those Western schools in wrestling right now. I don't know if that's going to change at some point further down the road.
I think it was. There's rumors. I think it's Oregon who wants to add a D1 wrestling program.
So that'll be interesting to see if they join. Will it be the Big Ten or will it be someone like the Big 12 who has Cal Baptist that's right there where Oregon would have to travel? At the closest, it would be Nebraska. So it'd be a far travel for Oregon if they were to add a Division I wrestling program. But back to the Big 12, these are all great wrestling programs, so it makes sense. Like there's a South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Utah Valley. They all have great wrestlers, so being in the Big 12 not just helps them even more.
Yeah, the Big 12 is, in my opinion, a conference that's kind of made up of a bunch of just different schools that some people might not know, which is fine. But it's interesting to see how some of these smaller schools like, Utah Valley have some solid wrestlers in their program, and just, seeing some of these schools that people might not hear of when they think of football or something, but they're very good at wrestling. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, I always find it funny. College wrestling, I know most of our listeners are like diehard wrestling fans. If you're not a college wrestling fan, you have no idea just how big it is.
Yeah.
I still remember when I was I think it was in high school at the time when the National Wrestling Championship was in Pittsburgh. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool to go to. And the get-in price was $400. And I was in awe. I'm like, really? It's this big of a deal? And
Yeah.
turns out it is. It's always just fun to watch people kind of take their first peek into college wrestling and see it. And potentially some people could be seeing their first peek of it at the Bryce Jordan Center. What are we looking at for this Wyoming team? Are there any matchups that we find exciting?
Yeah, I'm going to start this one.
Go for
My exciting matchup is at 125 pounds. It's going to be Luke Lillidahl against Jor Volk of Wyoming. He's a junior. He's a Big 12 champion. And he's ranked number 7 right now. So this could be that match that maybe Lillidahl cracks in the top 10 if he gets the victory. It's going to be interesting to see because this is definitely going to be his toughest match of the season. And I feel like that's something that we almost keep repeating ourselves saying, because now, as they really do have these team duels, you get to see these ranked, higher ranked opponents that, some of these guys haven't faced yet. And I think that's going to be my matchup of this match.
I'm going to go a little bit heavier. I am interested to see how Tyler Kasak continues to perform at 157. Right now he's projected to go against number 19, Jared Hill, who's a junior. He's 6-2 on the season. And Kasak continues to win and continues to win in dominant fashion to the point where this lineup just continues to look stronger. They talked about it on the broadcast of Lehigh, and it's a very strong chance of this happening that all 10 guys could be All-Americans in this lineup. And Kasak is number 4 right now. He's very well in the ranking that he will almost certainly get an All-American status when it comes down to that if he continues to win. But going against another ranked opponent, I just want to see how he continues to perform with a guy like Alex Facundo still right behind him that could step in at any moment.
Might have to have some real debates over the murderer's row of the lineup upcoming.
Yeah.
Anything else standing out heading into this weekend?
I'm going to say another one, 197 pounds. Josh Barr just beat Michael Beard. That was impressive. But Wyoming does have a solid 197-pounder. Joey Novak is ranked 14th. And I think that's another tough test for Barr to just see if he's really in that top 10 and just see if he can even move up even more.
I owe Josh Barr an apology. I saw Lucas Cochran that first week, as well as hearing some reports out of the practice room, and thought maybe Lucas Cochran is going to end up winning out the spot. Josh Barr, these last few weeks, has just blown this competition out of the water. It's been super impressive to see how he's adapted to 197.
Yeah, it's his spot now. It shouldn't even be a question at this point, and his ranking is proving that right now, and that win against Beard was so dominant that there shouldn't even be questions about 197 now.
Yeah, and I think another thing that was interesting, you talk about how dominant Lucas Kathryn was against Drexel, is the Army Black Knight Invitational when those two actually wrestled each other, Kathryn and Barr really dominated that match. He won, I believe, 10-1 against Kathryn, and that really showed, okay, maybe he is, Lucas Kathryn was dominant against Drexel, but maybe Josh Barr is even on another level than that, and so far I think he showed it.
And that just shows the depth of this team, that you have one of the top wrestlers at 197, and Lucas Kathryn is right behind him, that he could probably be a top wrestler as well. It's just like at 157 with Kasak and Facundo, both those guys could be national championship competitors, and it becomes tough decisions for Cael Sanderson to make of who has the better opportunity to win a national championship.
That's all for this week's episode of The Mat Return. I'm Evan Smith.
I'm Andrew Deal.
And I'm AJ Piazza.
We'll see you back next week.